Via Rail is Canada's national intercity and long-distance rail provider. The word via means by way of. So, in a literal sense, Via Rail provides transportation services by way of rail. Going back further to the word's origin, the Latin word via, pronounced via, was the word for a road or way. Similar to its American counterpart Amtrak, Via is partially government-funded. It is owned wholly by the Canadian government as a crown corporation. The company's origin story goes back to 1976, when Canadian National Railway, struggling from dwindling passenger traffic, began marketing its passenger trains with the Via Rail name. At the time, Canadian National Railway had not yet been privatized and as such was wholly owned by the government. In 1977, Via Rail was officially spun off as a separate crown corporation from CN, eventually also taking over passenger operations from the Canadian Pacific Railway the following year. Today, Via Rail continues to operate passenger trains all over Canada, including some long-distance services such as the world-famous Canadian passenger train between Vancouver, British Columbia and Toronto, Ontario. However, Via Rail's busiest operations are the corridor trains in eastern Canada. This is not too much of a surprise, as about half of Canada's overall population lives along this corridor. Bracketed by Windsor, Ontario on the southwest and Quebec City, Quebec in the east, the region is over 700 miles across from end to end. The corridor is actually comprised of a total of 5 different routes. The busiest sections run between Toronto and Montreal and between Toronto and Ottawa, Canada's national capital. Trains depart endpoints on both of these routes about once every other hour throughout the day. Both routes operate over the same set of tracks for most of the journey, with the line to Ottawa splitting off from Canadian National's Kingston subdivision at Brockville, Ontario. To ease congestion on the busy Kingston sub, Via operates the first 2 eastbound trips of the morning to Ottawa and Montreal as a combined train, known as a J train. 2 equipment sets are coupled together with passengers and crew on board. At Brockville Station, the 2 trains are uncoupled and the first train continues on to Ottawa with the second train going to Montreal. The third busiest route is the Quebec City, Montreal, Ottawa run, with trains departing about once every 3 to 4 hours each day. The fourth route, with trains operating 4 times per day in each direction, is the Windsor to Toronto service. These trains run west from Toronto to the border city of Windsor, which is located just across the river from Detroit, Michigan. The fifth and final service that is part of the corridor is the once daily in each direction Toronto to Sarnia train. This train also operates from Toronto west toward the international border. It shares a small portion of the route through London, Ontario with the Toronto to Windsor trains. Prior to April of 2004, the route between Sarnia and Toronto was used by an Amtrak train known as the International, which ran daily between Chicago, Illinois and Toronto. The International was replaced with a train called the Blue Water. The Blue Water runs as far as Port Huron, Michigan, which is just across the border from Sarnia. There is a 6th train that is technically operated as a Via Rail corridor train. This is the Amtrak Maple Leaf running between New York City and Toronto by way of Buffalo, New York and Niagara Falls. Via Rail crews take over operation of the train at the border, and it changes from Amtrak train numbers 63 and 64 to Via train numbers 97 and 98. The Maple Leaf is a once daily train. For the last few decades, Via has used heavily rebuilt F40PH locomotives and General Electric P42DC units to power trains on the corridor. The passenger car fleet is comprised mostly of LRC passenger cars and several decade-old but also heavily rebuilt stainless steel streamlined passenger cars known as the HEP2 fleet. Via also uses a handful of cars built in the UK known as the Renaissance fleet. In 2022, Via Rail began operating new passenger train sets featuring Siemens Mobility Charger locomotives and Venture passenger cars. Over the next few years, this equipment will completely take over for all Via Corridor services. Let's travel along the Via Rail corridor to see several of the soon-to-be retired train sets in action. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for this look at Via Rail's corridor trains. If you enjoyed this video or have any questions or comments you'd like to share with me, please leave those down below in the comments section. As always, a big thanks to all my supporters on Patreon. For regular notifications, every time I post to YouTube, click on the subscribe button and select the Receive All Notifications option. I'll be back next Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time for an all-new railroading adventure right here on the YouTube channel. That's it for now. Until next time, I'm Mike Armstrong. I'll see you down the line. Thanks for watching.